I'm in the souk, or marketplace, here in Old Jerusalem. Now, a lot of things have changed over time, but you can still get goods here that were sold during biblical times. This is frankincense. We know it best as one of the gifts that was brought to baby Jesus by the 3 wise men. How much is this?
This is 100 gram, 12 shekels.
12 shekels for one?
For one, yeah.
For one.
But the ancients knew that burning frankincense was an offering they had to make to God. It's still burned in churches today. And 2,000 years ago, pilgrims coming to Jerusalem and entering the temple would have inhaled its sweet fragrance. 3 times a year, the Jewish people came to the temple from all over the world for the major festivals.
I'm in Old Jerusalem, and this is the Western Wall.
It's the only above-ground structure that's left of the temple that the Romans destroyed. The Temple Mount is the holiest place in Judaism, and the Western Wall is its only physical remnant.
Just up here on Temple Mount, the very first temple was built about 1,000 years before Jesus was born. People come here 365 days a year, 24 hours a day to pray in this square. Many of them write prayers on small scripts and place them in the wall. Others kiss the wall.
The pilgrims brought animal sacrifices to the temple, but they didn't bring a goat or a dove with them halfway around the world. So the first thing they had to do was convert their currency so that they could buy animals to sacrifice. So what about this job, money changer? Did Jesus really object to it? After all, without it, pilgrims couldn't buy and offer their sacrifices. It wasn't the job. It was where the job was located, inside the temple.
This crowded city of pilgrims attracted merchants of every kind. It was a good place for business. But Jesus didn't want the temple turned into a business, and some say the priests were allowing it to happen.
I want to find out more about this job, which was unlike any other, and answered to a boss unlike any other. In the pressure cooker of Jerusalem, how did these priests balance religion, commerce, Rome, and the first-century rebel? In the time of the Bible, Jerusalem was as busy as it is today. 3 times a year, pilgrims came from all around to offer sacrifices in the temple that used to be beyond this wall.
Jerusalem's pilgrims were great for local jobs, then and now. There were food vendors, there were hostel owners, and there were merchants of every kind. But, unlike today, there were thousands of priests who served in the temple.
These priests were in the temple to represent the people before their God, and nothing could interfere with them performing their holy functions. The most important functions were performed by the high priest, but under Roman occupation there was plenty of interference with this job, and Rome made sure that the man it wanted was appointed. His duty was to God, but pleasing Rome allowed him to fulfill that duty. So he and the other priests had a delicate tightrope to walk. Shimon Gibson is a world-renowned biblical archaeologist who directs excavations in Israel. He can bring us closer to the lives of these men, for whom ritual purity was the key to being able to do their job.
So here you can see one of the gates which led into the temple area. This was the place where all the pilgrims who had been purified in the Siloam pool, and including the priests who had come from the upper city, would enter into the temple area.
So everybody comes right through here?
Exactly.
And it must have been a pretty chaotic scene if you've got all these people coming in. And
Fairly chaotic, but you had a very, very strict administration.
how so?
And had the temple administrators. They would make sure that only those who had been purified in the pools were allowed into the temple.
Everyone had to immerse in a special pool, called a mikveh, before entering the Holy Temple. Its purpose was not for physical cleanliness, but for ritual purity. There were large mikvahs for the pilgrims, like this one, the Pool of Siloam, mentioned in the New Testament and recently discovered near where the temple stood.
And the water was on different levels, so whenever the pool was at a lower level, then you descend the steps. If the water was at a higher level, then you could remain close to the top.
So this went continually down like
all
that?
the way down to the bottom, and the steps were on all four sides, which is quite nice. So you've got to imagine almost like a theatre, with all these people sitting around, and they've all come here in order to purify themselves before going up to the temple.
It was critical that priests become pure before entering the temple. One became impure by coming into contact with death. For instance, being in the presence of a dead body. And life's potential was sacred, so both the presence of semen that had not conceived, as well as menstrual fluid, required a trip to the mikveh. The priests believed that if they were impure when they entered the temple, everything they were trying to accomplish in the prayers for their people would fail. There were, and still are, strict rules about what kind of water could be used in a ritual bath. It couldn't be brought in by unnatural means. It had to be rainwater, or from a spring or river. Since nothing was more important than this ritual purity, some of the priests had their own private mikvahs. Shimon Gibson is digging in what is believed to have been a priestly quarter of ancient Jerusalem. And he has discovered what is believed to be a priestly house.
So we're going to go down here. We're actually going to descend through time, because we're at the level of the Ottoman period.
Right up
which
here.
is, yes, which is mid-16th century. And we're going to go all the way down to 2,000 years to the levels from the 1st century, from the time of Jesus.
Fantastic.
So we're going to descend the elevator of time.
How do you know that they were priestly houses as opposed to somebody else's house?
Well, we have historical sources. We also have archaeological findings. Excavations revealed a house with an inscription indicating that this was a house which belonged to the priestly family. I mean, these were the neighbors of King Herod the Great and subsequently of the Roman governors of Jerusalem, because the Roman governor was situated just up slope from where we are. Jerusalem was a very wealthy city, being the focus of pilgrims 3 times a year. Those who lived in Jerusalem were able to sell their goods to them, were able to rent out their houses. So you don't have a lower class in Jerusalem, you have the middle class, those who are better off and those who are less better off, and the aristocracy and the priesthood. People will sort of think of Jesus coming to Jerusalem and then moving in and around, in between the houses of the poor. But there were no poor people in Jerusalem at the time.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah, I never thought of that.
So there's a lot of animal bones here, and you can see them sort of scattered around. Here you can see a rib bone. Ah, look, look. There's a coin. You see that green? It's corroded. That's
green?
why it's got that green sort of skin to it.
That's really cool.
Yes. And what's nice is it's caught between these 2 stones. It'll give us some information about when this wall was constructed. Take it out.
You were actually trusting me.
Well, since you're here at the
right.
site, you've got to dig it out. The one thing you don't do is rub the surface, because it's corroded, and so it can actually peel away almost like an onion. And with it, it can take the image, which is on the coin itself, on the metal. This is the loose change. Just like you find loose change all over the place, modern loose change, you know. Same in antiquity.
I have to give it up.
Yes, you have to.
It's not a souvenir.
From the moment of discovery, it belongs to the state of Israel.
I knew that. I knew that.
That's the law.
So there we go. And that is my my first ever archaeological find.
Your fingers have touched history.
I know. That's beautiful. It really is.
It's exciting. There's always a first time, isn't it?
Touching history is quite a change from teaching it. But there's more to see as we descend further into history. Shimon is using geophysical mapping technology to see what hasn't yet been excavated. And he discovers something incredible at the lowest level of this house.
And lo and behold, in this area, we found this hidden chamber with its ceiling still intact.
Oh, fantastic.
It's really amazing.
Oh, my.
You're in the cellar of the priestly house, and it's here that you have this mikveh, which is this ritual pool. If you came in from the marketplace, you might have brushed shoulders with a leper, which had made you impure. So if you're entering into the house, the first thing you did was you went to purify yourself in the mikveh.
Finding a mikveh in the home of a priest tells us just how crucial ritual purity was. It wasn't only in the temple. They needed to be pure everywhere they went in the city of God. When Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, these priests would have felt that he was overturning their world. The delicate balance they had achieved between their God and the Romans. And here in his house, we can touch this man's life, this vanished job, temple priest.
But this is extraordinary.